If you wanted to buy a top-of-the-line graphics card in 2008, you could buy AMD's HD 4870 for $300. Alternatively, you could buy Nvidia's GTX 280 for $500, but that would be a bad purchase since you could spend that money on the 4870 X2, a monstrous dual GPU card that harnessed the power of two 4870s on a single board. Admittedly, crossfire support was unreliable and depended on both AMD and game developers, so there was one reason to stay away from the dual GPU boards. Fast forward 1 year to 2009. If you wanted the flagship GPU, you'd have to cough up $379 for the HD 5870. You'd have to wait until 2010 if you wanted Nvidia's response, the $500 GTX 480. Fast forward 1 year, you could buy AMD's 6990 or Nvidia's GTX 590 for $700. If you had cash to burn and didn't mind sporadic support for dual GPU cards. Nvidia's pricing remained relatively stable right up to the GTX 680, while the competing 7970 rose up to $550. Following this, Nvidia decided it was time to jack their prices up. If you wanted to buy a top-of-the-line GPU in early 2013, you'd have to pony up $650 for the GTX 780. 6 months later, the flagship 780 Ti would cost you $700. This was the price you could buy a dual GPU board for just a couple of years prior. Things had changed. If you wanted the top-of-the-line dual GPU card in 2014, you had one choice: spend $1,500 on the 295 X2. Fast forward to 2015. You can no longer turn to AMD for a reasonably priced flagship, as even the Radeon Fury X cost an unprecedented $650, a price identical to its competitor which ran faster and overclocked higher. Jump to 2016. Nvidia charged an unprecedented $700 for their GTX 1080, a price unheard of for an 80 series card. In 2018, they broke their own record by pricing the 2080 at a whopping $800. This wasn't even Nvidia's flagship. The top-of-the-line 2080 Ti cost an insane $1,200. While yes, these were just the founders' editions, this was just a farce to deceive consumers and hike prices even further. We've analysed this in detail in the founders' farce. You can watch that video later if you haven't already. The point is, GPU prices have skyrocketed in recent years. The price of high-end cards have shot up from $500 in 2012 to $650 in 2013, $700 in 2016, 2017, and $1,200 in 2018. What the hell is going on? Some might blame economic inflation. Others might speculate manufacturing costs are rising, forcing AMD and Nvidia to jack up prices to compensate. In this video, we're going to dive right in and see if there's something more sinister afoot. Let's look at AMD for our first example. For years, the Radeon flagships were designated the HD 70s and were priced below $550, as was the case with the 7970, 6970, 5870, and 4870. AMD changed their naming scheme with the introduction of the R9 290X, though this didn't appear to have affected their pricing structure. However, that changed with the introduction of the Fury X, which heralded AMD's break from their standardized nomenclature. No longer would the flagships be instantly recognized by the last few digits. For the next couple of generations, each Radeon flagship will be designated by a special title, completely independent of the generational naming scheme. Why? The Fury X was the first Radeon card to retail at $650, a price that consumers would have immediately identified as a hike had the card been designated the 390X. This would have correctly communicated the fact that it was a successor to the 290X. Alas, AMD decided to break their naming conventions just so they could get away with their markup. What made this really weird was the Fury X being priced identically to its Geforce competitor, the 980 Ti. This bizarre congruence across competitors would repeat itself with the Radeon 7, a product that performed identically to the 1080 Ti and was priced identically even though it arrived 2 years after the Pascal flagship. The 1080 Ti, for its part, is also guilty of GPU inflation, though this time Nvidia is to blame. For years, Geforce cards named their most powerful desktop cards GTX 80s and priced them at $500, as was the case with the GTX 480, 580, and 680. With the 700 series though, Nvidia priced the 780 at a woeful $650. To make matters worse, it wasn't even the generation's most powerful GPU. That would be the GTX 780 Ti, which Nvidia launched half a year later at an abysmal $700. Notice how Nvidia moved the flagship designation from 80 to 80 Ti. This is a sneaky attempt to downplay the hike in prices. We haven't jacked up the 80 prices that much, we just introduced a more powerful segment. Never mind the fact that the flagship was always the 80. What the introduction the 80 Ti has done is downgraded the 80 to a penultimate product. Though Nvidia did not accompany this with a downgrade in price. That was the point. To make matters worse, Nvidia had also introduced an even higher segment with the Kepler 700 series, the Titan. Nvidia priced the Titan at an eye-watering $1,000, which they justified as this being a prosumer card. This wouldn't be the case with the Maxwell Titan, which had its compute functionality crippled, removing Nvidia's flimsy justification for charging over $1,000 for a poorly cooled blower card. Nvidia wouldn't get away with any of this if they had to compete for consumers. They had learned this lesson with the $650 GTX 280, which AMD undercut with their $300 4870 so handily that Nvidia was forced to drop prices by $150 less than a month after the launch. What happened to this competition? Well, we can't say for certain. Let's look at a case from 2007. If you think this is ancient history and hence doesn't matter, remember, history tends to repeat itself. Indeed, stick around and you might notice striking parallels to modern pricing trends. So let's take a look at this 2007 document. A major class action lawsuit was filed in the state of California against ATI, AMD, and Nvidia, alleging that in violation of the federal antitrust laws, Nvidia and ATI conspired to fix, raise, maintain, and stabilize prices of graphics processing chips and cards. The named plaintiffs also contend that defendants unlawfully colluded to coordinate new product introductions. Prior to entering the conspiracy, Nvidia and ATI competed vigorously on innovation, speed to market, and price, with product introductions at varying times and price points, often leapfrogging each other in product advances. This competition was consistent with competitive sectors of the consumer electronics computer industry, which generally are characterized by increasing performance and decreasing prices. After the conspiracy began, a new pattern emerged. The formerly competitive entities began a pattern of introducing products simultaneously or near simultaneously at identical or near identical prices. In addition, GPU prices trended upwards, while the prices of GPU components and raw materials, and the prices of comparable products, most notably CPUs, continued to drop. The alleged conduct is consistent with conspiracy and inconsistent with independent competitive conduct. In short, the GPU market has not functioned as would be expected of a competitive market during the conspiracy. Defendants ATI and Nvidia have engaged in a series of secret meetings and communications in which they restrain trade by 1. Agreeing to reduce competition with each other in order to maintain and increase their margins, 2. Agreeing to fix prices, and 3. Coordinating the timing of when similar products were introduced into the market. As a result of these meetings, on many occasions throughout the class period, ATI and Nvidia agreed to set the price for their GPU products and coordinate when these products will be introduced into the market. By agreeing on the price of the products and the timing of the product launches, ATI and Nvidia were able to, and did in fact, inflate the prices of GPUs. Despite the passage of time, and despite the fact that defendants Nvidia and AMD are public companies, neither defendant has denied the allegations of anti-competitive meetings or stated that there is no plausible bias for the investigation being undertaken. Defendants' anti-competitive behavior during the conspiracy period was a sharp departure from their vigorous competition prior to the conspiracy. Prior to the start of the conspiracy, the GPU market behaved as one would expect a competitive market to behave, particularly one involving high-technology products. Nvidia and ATI raced to be the first in the market, leapfrogging one another with competing product introductions. These product introductions during the pre-conspiracy period also had various and substantially divergent prices. During the pre-conspiracy period, the difference in the price of defendants' competing product introductions ranged from $50 to $250, with an average difference of $117 per product. During the pre-conspiracy period, none of the defendants' product releases were identically priced. By contrast, during the conspiracy period, every single competing product released by defendants was identically priced. The competition between Nvidia and ATI came to a halt. Defendants stopped competing on price, and their competing product introductions no longer leapfrogged one another. As these charts show, defendants did not time and price their competing product introductions in lockstep prior to the start of the conspiracy, as they did during the conspiracy period. The behaviour of ATI and Nvidia during this timeframe is typical of normal competition in a high-technology market, where participants compete vigorously on price and innovation, with each supplier racing to release new generation products with new features and capabilities and improved performance and speed significantly ahead of the competitor, all in an effort to capture greater sales. Because the competition to be first to market with new generation technologies is fierce, suppliers must engage in accelerated research and development, R&D, which typically entails greater expenses than R&D that takes place at a more leisurely pace, but is generally considered necessary to stay ahead or at least not fall behind in competitive technology industries. Because of the advantages that can accrue to the first to market or the superior technology, even duopolists have a greater incentive to innovate than in more static industries. Nevertheless, at any point in the R&D process, numerous incidents can delay, halt, or speed up the process. One reason for this is that GPU design is a complex and extremely expensive proposition. Many workers' hours and capital expenditures are used in R&D of new technologies. This is another reason that it would be unlikely that competing firms' pricing and product introductions would be identically matched. Rather, in a competitive GPU market operating free of collusion, it would be expected that rivals would attempt to leapfrog past one another to introduce their new products as fast as possible, as occurred during the pre-conspiracy period. The historical competition in price and innovation during the pre-conspiracy period squeezed or eliminated profits for Nvidia and ATI. ATI struggled for several years to turn any profit at all, and Nvidia experienced at least 3 quarters in a row of substantial losses. This squeeze on their profitability led Nvidia and ATI to conspire to coordinate their new product launches and to fix prices. The conspiracy was successful in this regard. Profit margins for both companies increased during the conspiracy period. The intense competition by the defendants in the pre-conspiracy period stands in stark contrast to their collusive behaviour during the conspiracy period. As a result of the collusive arrangements between defendants in this case, the GPU market during the class period was characterized by high prices and lethargic innovation and competition, as both parties adhered to those agreements. The defendants have kept prices high and moderated competition in innovation by agreeing on product release schedules and prices. That sounds familiar. It is a bit odd that the Radeon 7 is priced at $700, considering this card only manages to match the performance of the 1080 Ti, Nvidia's $700 Pascal flagship released 2 years prior. The class action filing may hold more clues, so let's see what else it has to say. Defendants' behaviour is contrary to how firms would be expected to operate in a competitive market and is indicative of collusion. In short, in a competitive GPU market operating free of collusion, it would not be expected that rivals would introduce their new products at similar times and at identical prices, as alleged herein. Engaging in such behaviour would be against each defendant's individual self-interest, absent an agreement to fix prices and to limit competition, because each defendant would risk losing the opportunity to capture sales with first-to-market and competitively priced products. However, if defendants were colluding, then engaging in such behaviour will be profitable and in defendants' mutual interests. This behaviour is even more unusual and suspect because on virtually every occasion, further described below, it closely followed when representatives of Nvidia and ATI met together at various industry trade association conferences and events. Nvidia and ATI's coordinated product releases at the same time and the same prices, following meetings between the companies, are contrary to the history of competition in the consumer electronics and personal computer industry, and were done without any plausible rationale for such coordination. In the spring and summer of 2003, pursuant to the conspiracy alleged herein, ATI and Nvidia slowed the pace at which they released new GPU products and coordinated the pricing of these new products. The slowdown was intended to limit price competition on new products, to raise prices on existing products, to reduce research and development expenses, and to improve the profit margins of both companies. These agreements to conspire on product introductions and pricing coincided, at least in part, with when representatives of both companies attended certain industry trade association conferences and events together. On March 4th to March 8th, 2003, executives of ATI and Nvidia attended the Game Developers Conference in San Jose, California. On March 5th, 2003, it was announced that the ATI Radeon 9800 would go on sale that month at a price of $399. The Nvidia Geforce FX 5800 was also scheduled to go on sale in March of 2003 at a price of $399. In April of 2003, it was announced that the ATI Radeon 9600 would be priced around $200. It was also announced that the Nvidia Geforce 5600 would appear in stores in April of 2003, priced at $200 as well. Executives of ATI and Nvidia have been on the board of PCI SIG, which is a trade association that develops and manages peripheral component interconnect, PCI. PCI is technology that delivers input-output functionality for computers by connecting various chips, adapter cards and device drivers within a computer system. On the 2nd and 3rd of June 2003, PCI SIG held its 2003 Game Developers Conference. On the 2nd to the 3rd of June 2003, and again in August 2003, representatives of ATI and Nvidia both attended PCI SIG conferences. Following these meetings, ATI and Nvidia delayed the launch of two new competing products that the industry expected to be introduced that year. ATI and Nvidia delayed the launch of those products in tandem until 2004, at which point the launch was made at an identical retail price point. Specifically, Nvidia announced in October of 2003 that it was postponing the introduction of its NV40 graphics technology. At the same time, ATI announced it was postponing the introduction of its R400 graphics technology, which would have directly competed with Nvidia's NV40 graphics technology. Although either party could have pushed forward in an effort to get the jump on the other, the parties did not accelerate past one another and proceeded with a coordinated launch of the new products. It was at this time that the Inquirer published an article that claimed sources alleged ATI and Nvidia have recently had meetings in an effort to put the brakes on the speed at which new graphic products are released. Both companies are wary of the huge money they're putting into research and development, and the subsequent hammering they get from the gentlefolk of the press if launch dates are missed. Lower margins and the still high cost of producing technology are other good reasons for the firms to talk to each other in an effort to cool things. The firms have also detected signs of ennui from consumers who see the mega dollars they're paying for new graphics cards superseded just a few months down the line. All good reasons, therefore, for the two graphics giants to huddle together in secret conclaves to see what can be done and to balance the financial books that little bit better. This article would later be quoted in the class action filing, so let's return to that now. On the 22nd to the 26th of March 2004, ATI and Nvidia attended the 2004 Game Developers Conference in San Jose, California. Then during 2004, ATI and Nvidia jointly introduced the new technologies that have been jointly postponed in October 2003, at the same price and on very close to or exactly the same date. On or about April 14, 2004, Nvidia released its Geforce 6800 Ultra graphics card for $499, while ATI released its Radeon X800 XT-PE graphics card on May 4, 2004 for $499. Likewise, Nvidia introduced the Geforce 6800 GT on May 4, 2004 for $399, and ATI introduced the Radeon X800 Pro also on May 4, 2004 and also for $399. Representatives of Nvidia and ATI attended the June 15, 2004 PSI SIG annual meeting. On August 12, 2004, Nvidia announced the release of the Geforce 6600 GT at a retail price of $199. ATI released a competing product, the Radeon X600 XT, on September 21, 2004. The Radeon X600 GT was priced at $199 as well. On the 7th to the 11th of March 2005, representatives of Nvidia and ATI both attended the Game Developers Conference, which was held in San Francisco, California. Following these meetings, ATI and Nvidia coordinated the pricing of new GPU products that were being introduced into the market. In July 2005, Nvidia released its Geforce 6200 GT with 256 MB of double data rate DDR memory and 8 times AGP at a price of $140. This came right on the heels of ATI's introduction in April 2005 of the Radeon 9550, which also featured 256 MB of DDR memory and 8 times AGP, and was also priced at $140. Representatives of Nvidia and ATI then attended the SIGGRAPH conference in Los Angeles, California, from July 31st to August 4th, 2005, and the Game Developers Conference in London, England, from August 30th to September 1st, 2005. Following these meetings in July and August of 2005, ATI and Nvidia again engaged in product launches during the same time period and at the same prices. In September of 2005, ATI announced the release of its Crossfire graphics card, including the Radeon X800 XL Crossfire and the Radeon X800 Crossfire with suggested retail prices of $299 and $199 respectively. At the same time, Nvidia released comparable products, the Geforce 6800 GT and Geforce 6800, with respective retail prices of $299 and $199. On the 20th to the 24th of March 2006, representatives of Nvidia and ATI both attended the Game Developers Conference in San Jose, California. Following these conferences in March of 2006, ATI and Nvidia again announced new GPU products with the same time period and the same price. Nvidia released its Geforce 7600 GT with 256 MB of DDR memory and 16 times PCIe on May 5th, 2006, at a price of about $175. 2 weeks earlier, on April 24th, 2006, ATI released the Radeon X1600, which also had 256 MB of DDR memory and 16 times PCIe, at the same price of $175. On August 30th, 2006 to September 1st, 2006, representatives of Nvidia and ATI both attended and made presentations at the Computer Entertainment Software Association Developers Conference in Tokyo, Japan. In furtherance of the conspiracy, Nvidia released its Geforce 7950 GT on September 14th, 2006, and ATI released its Radeon X1950 Pro on October 17th, 2006. The prices, as quoted by online retailer Newegg.com, were $269.99 for each graphics card. The features were virtually identical. In addition, Nvidia released its Geforce 7900 GS on September 6, 2006, for a price of $200. ATI also released its Radeon X1650 Pro on September 15, 2006, for a price of $199. Again, the features of these products were virtually identical. As these examples show, Nvidia and ATI stopped racing each other to market during the conspiracy period. Instead, they began introducing their products in lockstep and pricing them identically or nearly identically. This unnatural behavior lasted for approximately 4 years, until the advent of the DOJ investigation. Defendants' behavior during this timeframe was a sharp departure from the competition that existed in the pre-conspiracy period, and would not have been in the best interest of either Nvidia or ATI, absent a conspiracy. Things changed after the Department of Justice began investigating the industry, as the filing observed. It appears as though competition has increased, with the defendants beginning to compete on price and speed to market again. For example, Nvidia and ATI's introduction of their first DirectX 10 compliant graphics card took place more than 6 months apart and with a price difference of $200. More specifically, on November 8, 2006, Nvidia introduced its first DirectX 10 compliant graphics card, the Geforce 8800 GTX. The Geforce 8800 GTX was priced at $599. ATI did not release its first DirectX 10 compliant graphics card, the Radeon HD 2900 XT, until May 14, 2007, at a price of $399. This apparent return to competition is in stark contrast to the lockstep pricing and product introductions that characterized the conspiracy period before the DOJ investigation began. Was this why AMD priced the 4870 so competitively? Was scrutiny from the Department of Justice the only reason consumers were reprieved from Nvidia's insane $650 price for their GTX 280? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. The lawsuit filing may hold more data to help you reach an informed opinion. The structure of the GPU market is conducive to a secret price-fixing agreement and has made collusion particularly attractive in this specific market. The GPU market is highly concentrated, and it's become even more so during the course of the class action period because of significant consolidation among industry participants. At present, this market is essentially a two-supplier business. The existence of excess capacity is another factor that makes collusion attractive in the GPU market and contradicts the notion that independent business decisions account for the strange increases in GPU prices during the class period. Both ATI and Nvidia operate as fabless manufacturers, meaning they both outsource the production of GPUs and other components, as well as the assembly and packaging of the finished product. This allows the companies to avoid significant costs and risks associated with operating manufacturing facilities. Additionally, these companies outsource supply among multiple manufacturers. The practical effect of this way of doing business is that both companies generally have effective excess capacity to produce more units, and can increase or decrease output without incurring the level of added fixed cost associated with building their own plants. Restricted capacity is not, therefore, a plausible explanation for GPU prices going up, while the price of both similar processors and GPU components go down. GPU pricing during the conspiracy period provides further evidence of collusion, as it has not behaved as would be expected in a competitive market. Rather, as detailed below, GPU pricing during the conspiracy period has been characterized by unnatural price stability and certain periods of upward pricing trends. That sounds very familiar. Just look at the pricing for the GTX 900, 1000 and RTX series, or the 290X, Fury, Vega and Radeon 7. The lawsuit went on to compare the GPU market to CPUs. In the personal computer industry, this drive to innovate and to compete on price is generally present, even where the industry is considered a duopoly, such as the rivalry between Intel and AMD in central processing units. Despite the fact that there are only two competitors in the CPU market, both innovation and price competition have been vigorous compared to this same sort of competition in the GPU market during the conspiracy period, with each company striving to leapfrog the other with new product releases and succeeding at doing so. This competition in the CPU market has steadily driven prices down, while performance has improved exponentially. Based on available data and published reports, GPU and CPU pricing trends closely tracked each other in the pre-conspiracy period, as pricing trends in both markets were substantially declining. However, this relationship abruptly stopped during the conspiracy period, as GPU and CPU prices began for the first time to trend in opposite directions. While CPU prices continued to substantially decline, GPU prices began to steadily increase and continued to increase throughout the conspiracy period. Again, this feels familiar. Ryzen ushered in a new era of price efficiency, forcing Intel to cut prices of their quad-core CPUs. Meanwhile, Nvidia continued to jack up prices as they moved from Maxwell to Pascal to Turing. This filing serves as a prophecy, even though it was intended to be a record. Average CPU prices decreased more than 20% from 2002 to 2006, while average GPU prices increased approximately 9% during the same time. So what reason might AMD and Nvidia have had to collude? As a result of their collusion, ATI and Nvidia achieved stable market shares and record profits during the conspiracy period. In contrast, ATI struggled throughout the pre-conspiracy period to turn any profit at all and suffered losses or no profits in every quarter after the second quarter of 2000. With the exception of a two-quarter dip, ATI enjoyed growing profits during the conspiracy period and enjoyed record profits at various points in the conspiracy period. Likewise, immediately prior to the conspiracy, Nvidia's profits fell to near zero, and then during the conspiracy period, grew steadily and reached record levels. We don't know if AMD and Nvidia were guilty of conspiracy. We do know their lawyers tried to hide internal emails the plaintiffs presented as evidence by claiming these messages were trade secrets. Thankfully, the judge saw right through this ploy and overruled their attempt, saying, "This court is not a wholly owned subsidiary of your companies. I am against you hiding information from the public. If we get to summary judgment in this case, nothing will be under seal. Even if it is under seal and it is a recipe for Coke, you have my permission to blurt it out." It's easy to see why AMD and Nvidia didn't want the public to read those emails. We launched a GPU initiative at some industry show together, perhaps something like Meltdown or IDF. We could even share a GPU initiative both together to get tons of PR from the press. That doesn't sound like companies competing. This is what Nvidia Senior Vice President of Marketing, Dan Vivoli, said to ATI's President and Chief Operating Officer, Dave Orton of AMD. Even though we are competitors, we have the common goal of making our category a well-positioned, respected playing field. Both of us have spent the last 3 years trying to bring the perceived value of our products up to the level of Intel. The GPU category is clean and has served us well that way. We both have increased the price of our high-end products several-fold over the last 4 years, while Intel's high-end prices have more than halved. Creating another category serves to work contradictory to that. How does one cleanly position it versus a GPU and a CPU? It will tear down what we have both built. Does this sound like collusion? You be the judge. Here's the last bit of information to help you decide. Nvidia settled the class action lawsuit by offering initial plaintiffs $112,500 and a further $1.7 million to all the others who subsequently signed up when the lawsuit attained class action status. Another outlet reported AMD agreed to be part of this settlement. It should be noted that the Department of Justice did drop their investigation in October 2008, bringing no charges of price fixing against Nvidia or AMD. So were they innocent after all? Was there really no collusion? Were the identical prices and synchronized launches of 10 competing products merely a coincidence? What do you make of this? Let us know in the comment section below. And that concludes our take on collusion in the GPU industry. If you found this interesting, please share this video to spread the word. There is more content like this on the way. Please like, subscribe and press the bell button so you don't miss out.